All right, morning everybody. Thanks very much for coming. Obviously with that start and the big 13-foot eddy up in the lobby and various other things that are going on, I think some of you, or maybe all of you, will have twigged as to what we're going to be doing, what we're talking about this morning. So I'd like to try and skip over the kind of normal introduction, conference-y type bits as quickly as we can. We're Roadhouse. Started in Vancouver in 2009. We've been building mobile games exclusively since around 2013. Number of different game projects and partners here that you can see. So doing a lot of work with Red Bull on some action sports titles, most recently Bike Unchained. We have a partnership with publishers Clearinghouse and Shoal Games, working on some social casino. And then also we have a focus on role-playing games. Did a project with Smosh, which are the YouTube guys, last year. Been working on a Warhammer title as well. And actually role-playing is one of those areas that we've decided to start investing for ourselves as well. And what we're talking about today is one of the first fruits of that transition. A little bit about me. Been in the games industry for about 15 years now, I guess a bit more. Started back in Tokyo actually in 2000. And used to work with Nexon first off. So really my entire career has been about games as a service, initially on the PC and then transitioning to web, and then as I said from 2013 exclusively on mobile. So really kind of a global experience there, and a lot about what Roadhouse is doing now. And obviously we are looking to Asia. We continue to look there for game design innovations and also innovations around business model. And so, obviously Vancouver is a great place to do that, being, right in the middle between Asia and Western markets. As I said, Roadhouse has been around for about 6 years now. Surprisingly, I still think of us as a little scrappy startup, but we've grown to about 160 people, working on multiple projects, both on the development side and then also we do user acquisition and publishing services as well for third parties. So working with some quite large companies and large games there. I'm also on the board of DigiBC, which is the industry body for the interactive digital media industry in British Columbia. Spending a lot of time working with the government on things like tax credit and the environment to build games in Vancouver. And if you're around tomorrow, there's a panel on the Vancouver games industry, which will be interesting as well. But interestingly, if you've known me for more than, 20 seconds, I suppose, but at least 20 minutes, it's pretty hard to stop me talking about metal. I've been a metal fan for many years. That picture is not my sister. That tells you partly how many years I've been a metal fan, and why it is that you shouldn't drink too much beer over the course of your career in the games industry. But anyway, yeah, so that's me back when, I think 30 years ago probably. And part of that sort of love of metal has really been centered around Iron Maiden. So you can see here that there's a few of my trinkets and trophies that I've managed to collect over the years. Managed to be lucky enough back in 2008 to fly on Bruce Air, which was 757 Ed Force. Well, I guess it wasn't Ed Force 1, it was Flight 666. Actually had the flight number 666 there, as you can see. Managed to fly with Bruce. That was to his 50th birthday bash in Prague and Warsaw, so a couple of great gigs. But really, metal's been part of my life for many years, and particularly Maiden. It's interesting. You look at this picture here. So my dad actually, I had to twist his arm a little bit, but my dad was always great, and he was willing to take us to gigs, and that's actually the T-shirt from Peace of Mind at Nottingham Royal Centre, 1983. I don't know if anybody else was on that. I went to see that tour. Did you go to that tour? You went down? Yeah, Peace of Mind. Awesome. So actually that's my son now. Obviously that t-shirt's a bit too small for me, but when Maiden rolls through Vancouver in April, it's obviously going to be great to be able to take my son along to see Maiden as well. And he is actually a fan, so in this case I had to twist my dad's arm, but it's not like I have to twist his arm, which is good. I think part of that's obviously I was just talking a little bit about my dad. He said to me, around that time, as long as you do what you're interested in life, fundamentally, things will tend to work out. There's been a few times in my career where I've really, because I've been interested in everything that I've done for the last 20 years, But then one day back in April, I guess, of 2014, I got a phone call which kind of proved the point, really, because I had a friend, been in the industry for a long time, started working at this company, 50cc. So we got this phone call one day in Vancouver, and this guy says, hey, you know, got some friends here at this 50cc company, and they're wondering maybe if you guys would be interested in making a game with Iron Maiden. And I was like, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Well, you know, it depends on the deal terms, mate, you know. Obviously, not really true. So I was half terror and half excitement that we got that phone call. But, you know, we said, okay, well, we've got to embrace these opportunities. And so we decided that we'd start a joint venture with 50cc. A couple of the 50cc guys are here in the audience. So we did, and started this company, Nodding Frog. And basically, we decided that we would move forward and see whether or not we could pull off this deal. So that was April 2014. Obviously, you know, I think probably even prior to that, 50cc had been talking with Maiden, and the results of, I guess, now close on 2 years of collaboration and, you know, a lot of great opportunities and things like that is the result here. Yeah, so it's with great pleasure that we introduce Iron Maiden Legacy of the Beast, which is the name of a new mobile RPG that we are planning to release in the summer. Obviously, we're announcing a few months in advance of that. We'll go into a little bit more detail as to why that is. Obviously, it's a great opportunity, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it this morning. But before we talk about the game too much, obviously it'd be great just to touch on Iron Maiden a little bit. I know there are some fans here, as I said, who've twigged as to what we're doing. But you know, the band's really, for me, the most inspirational, most sort of formative heavy metal band of all time, really. 16 studio albums, close on 100 million albums sold. And you know, obviously Eddie as a character has really been front and center of the whole history of the band, way back from the earliest days. You know, he's been in East London, he's been a mummy, he's been to outer space, and so obviously, you know, both Eddie as a character and the stories and the worlds that have been created over the last 40 years are very, you know, ripe for this kind of adaptation into other forms of media. And if you think, you know, obviously the band had a great sort of heyday in the 80s, but if you think it was all about the 80s, then what I wanted to do was to show this next video, which is all taken from the 2013 tour. Actually that tour was one of the highest grossing tours of 2013. So let me just show the video, and then we'll come back after that. as I said, that's 2013, just to sort of update the story a little bit. In 2015, September, I think, Book of Souls came out. As you can see there are a number of very fine reviews. Talking about a band at the peak of its powers, still innovating, right? It's not, a band that goes out and just does greatest hits sets all the time. Book of Souls, really fabulous album. And you can see there a couple of interesting quotes. Actually, the Times was already talking about how, there's a room for this kind of very bombastic kind of metal, I guess, and how, there are similarities between properties like Game of Thrones, things like that. So obviously that's something that we were fully aware of as we started to look at this project. Also the tour, back in August, another world tour was announced, so Book of Souls World Tour. Going to play to roughly 1.5 million people over the next 6 months. And I said that I managed to travel on the 757, well hopefully 747 now, so I think Bruce is in simulator training probably this week, but anyway. So the 747's there as well. And also just announced the first 2 dates of the band's career in China. So if you happen to be in Beijing or Shanghai around the end of April, then there may be some gentlemen at the back that could help us out with some guest passes. I don't know about that, but anyway, we'll see. One thing that you'll find, obviously as a fan, you kind of get this sense of what makes Maiden special. And for me, it's, the fans always come first. And as we started to work with Maiden as a band, as an organisation, the fans really do come first, but also whenever they do anything, they don't do it by halves, right? This is a key thing. So if you look at Trooper, for example, which is Maiden's beer, it's actually really great beer. It's not a question of taking a beer and slapping the logo on it. That really is not what Maiden as an organisation is about. And so, Trooper as a beer was the result of months and months of effort and research into creating a really great product. And the results speak for themselves. So Trooper actually sold well over 10 million pints in its first couple of years of launch. Regarded as, I think, the most successful British beer launch of the last 20 years. And it's interesting because, Maiden fans like Maiden, Maiden fans like beer. So the Iron Maiden beer should, as it's been proven, goes very well. Hopefully that same thing will turn out to be the case with the game as well. Oops, wrong button, sorry. And obviously, Maiden, I think, has sort of transcended its limit or the boundaries of being this heavy metal band. This slide's an interesting one. We're not necessarily saying that all these people, are into the band or into metal, but clearly, there's an affinity with this iconic image, both of Eddie and his Iron Maiden. Obviously, there are some celebs up there that are big Iron Maiden fans as well. But it was interesting as we came in. Obviously, there's the big Eddie up in the lobby. And I think, some people were looking at it and going, oh, that's really cool, even though they don't necessarily recognize it. So, there's definitely this idea that a whole new bunch of people would find this imagery very cool, very interesting, and want to come to this product. As I mentioned when I was talking about Trooper, Maiden's not an organisation that does things by halves. And we were actually asked yesterday in an interview, what makes this project different. I think one of the things is, as a band, how many bands would you know that actually hire a creative director or head of interactive in some cases as well? But Maiden did that a couple of years ago, and I'd like to bring Lexi Leon up to the stage as a special guest from Phantom Music Management, who look after Iron Maiden. And Lexi's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that he's been doing and how the game fits into this overall plan of extending and expanding, what Maiden is.
Thanks, James. So, before we dive in further, I'd like to talk a bit about our fans. And we have an incredibly diverse and creative and loyal fan base. And I think for them, Eddie as a character, he lives in their hearts and minds, and he's kind of transcended being this image on a shirt or an album cover. And we see so many fantastic interpretations of this character from the fans, this sort of community created content. And I want to share a couple of things with you from that. So here we have every single Iron Maiden album cover has been recreated with the minions from Despicable Me, and I refer to this as the Iron Minion phenomenon. And it's one great example of the fans were running away with the imagery and this desire to see Eddie recreated in new mediums, different forms, crossovers with other IPs, that kind of thing. And another great one, possibly my favourite on the subject of small, brightly coloured people, is One particularly dedicated fan has recreated a live set entirely in Lego stop motion. So here we go with that. So, I mean, personally, I love that. I think that's fantastic. And, you know, for me, my goal is to try and really engage with this audience and sort of give the people what they want, which is more Eddie, more Maiden in new forms, new mediums, but without compromising the values of Maiden. You know, obviously this is all about fans come first, but it's also about the integrity and the quality of everything in which we do. And, you know, Eddie as a character, he just has immense potential as a protagonist, as this kind of heroic, perhaps anti-hero character. He's incredibly powerful, possibly immortal, and yet he's quite vulnerable. We've seen him be lobotomized, we've seen him die and live again and, you know, burst up from the grave. You know, there's a lot there to work with, and as James mentioned, you know, he's been in ancient civilizations, he's been in the far reaches of space. I mean, this is a very rich mythology to dive into. So, for me, it's all about basically wreaking havoc on popular culture with Eddie. How do we bring Eddie to the forefront? And as someone who's worked in the comics industry previously, as well as games, various other types of media, I go to Comic-Con every year. And it's fascinating that Comic-Con, the San Diego Comic-Con, the largest sort of pop culture event in the world, about 250,000 people descend on the San Diego City Center every year for that, for the past sort of 30 years. And until very recently, we've never had a presence at Comic-Con. And nonetheless, despite the fact you see huge, 80-foot Optimus Primes and huge, effigies of Superman and whatever else, you see a tremendous number of people wearing Iron Maiden t-shirts. And I think this is because, for me as well, and for these fans, Eddie belongs up there with the Batmans and Supermans of the world, with the Robocops and the Terminators. He is an extremely cool, highly original and innovative character. And so the first thing I did was I set about reaching out to a number of fantastically talented artists that I've worked with in the past, and we did various interpretations of Eddie that we brought to Comic-Con, a few of them up here now. One is by a very talented anime illustrator, one is by a fantastic poster, a British illustrator called Dan Mumford, who recently did all the IMAX posters actually for Star Wars The Force Awakens, and the last one here over on the right is by a guy called Richard Friend, who is a DC Comics inker for Batman, Wonder Woman and all that good stuff. And these were very well received, most of them are sold out now. And this was the first foray into the world of sort of popular culture, pop art, and we hope to do a lot more of that in future and bring Eddie to Comic-Con this year and the years thereafter. But I mean, really this is all about world building, expanding the character and new iterations of the character, and working with incredibly talented and creative folks to do that and make sure we maintain this quality bar. One thing that makes a lot of sense when you're world building and you're building a new cast of characters and you want the fans to be able to interact with that character and engage with him is, of course, video games. What better way to bring the fans into the world and allow them to engage with the character directly, perhaps even control the character and sort of explore his immortality and test the limits of his power. Video games isn't actually something new for Iron Maiden. So in my youth I played a game called Ed Hunter, which was an on-rails shooter that was actually packaged essentially free with a Greatest Hits double CD. So it was a double CD called Ed Hunter, it was Greatest Hits compilation, and it came with a third disc that was a video game application, PC app, of Ed Hunter, which is a 3D on-rail shooter. Perhaps an overly ambitious project at the time, given the technological limitations of PC gaming and the just rich, amazing, detailed imagery of Iron Maiden. Very hard for that to translate into games at the time. But on the flip side, massively prescient. The band has, never shied away from doing something new, always want to innovate. Rod, who's here today, the band's manager since the beginning, very innovative team that Rod's put together, that's always been behind the band. And this is a great example for me, where you look now and you think, oh yeah, releasing a game app to promote album, movie, whatever it is, commonplace. Everyone does that. Back then, unheard of. And yet, they did it, and it's really, quite an audacious thing to do. And now we're talking about our return to video games. And we waited a long time because we wanted to get it right and we wanted to not be held back by technical restrictions and limitations. And at the same time, we wanted to be able to do it essentially much like this, as a giveaway for free to reach as many fans as possible. Back then, the way we engaged with fans was by the fans buying the discs. Not so much the case anymore. There's new ways to engage with fans, and so mobile makes perfect sense. One of the projects that I'm most proud of that I worked on recently, and this was all going on while we were working with Roadhouse, is a music video for The Single Speed of Light, which basically was a giant teaser for our return to video games. So I'm going to roll a clip, and then I'm going to hand it back to James, and thank you very much. Oh. All right.
So I'm just going to cut that one there. Just talk a little bit about how the fan reaction to that video then helped contribute to the ongoing projects around the game. Obviously, you can see from some of the comments and also from the fact that that video is now closing in on 10 million views. There's a huge amount of interest in games from the Iron Maiden fan base, but it's not only anecdotal. Just as a subset of data, obviously, we've done a lot of research as well as obviously just from that sense of knowing that this is going to work. This is Facebook back in October, I think the 23rd. You can see there that Iron Maiden has 13 point something, it's up to 13.6 million likes right now, as a band, which puts it somewhere close to Star Wars, probably slightly higher than League of Legends, but there's a lot of other IP down there. And again, I don't think people necessarily understand that this is the sort of potency that the band continues to have. What are we doing? It's Legacy of the Beast. Obviously, the word legacy in no way implies that this is done and dusted. It's all about expanding and extending the legacy that we've all come to, know and love over the last 30 years into sort of new areas and let people come to this thing through new channels. Very quickly, we're not doing too much of talking about the game today, but we'll just let you know a few things about it. So, first of all, what is it? It is an RPG. Obviously, a lot of people thought, maybe we'd do a music game, but really, Eddie and the worlds and the stories and the lore is so rich for adaptation to an RPG that's what we wanted to do. Cast of characters drawn from Maiden lore. There's a bunch: the Nomad, the Mariner, the Clairvoyant. They're all going to be there in the game. And we wanted to make an innovative RPG experience, which actually had a broad appeal. Again, Trooper's a great beer, irrespective of the fact that it's an Iron Maiden beer, and we wanted to make this a great game. Irrespective of the fact that it has Iron Maiden. Obviously for me, the Iron Maiden music and the characters just icing on the cake, but fundamentally it's a great game. And obviously the team at Roadhouse, there are a lot of Maiden fans there, but we're not all Maiden fans, and so I think that's great in a sense in that really we are approaching it from the game development side first and foremost, which was actually something that the band and the organisation, Phantom, wanted to make sure was there right from the beginning. And obviously it's great for ongoing updates, special events. There are hundreds of Eddies, lots of different countries on the tour that we can integrate with. It's been a real collaboration. I've been over probably once every month. A lot of the game team have been to London many times. Rod Smallwood, as Lexi said, been around from the very beginning of the band, visited Vancouver in November. Tony Newton, live sound engineer, came over and worked for a few days with our sound guys to make sure that the music was how Steve Harris wanted it to be or needed it to be, or we all needed it to be that necessary quality. So why did we do it? I mean, really the fact is that these stories and these characters and these worlds demand to be turned into this kind of experience. And as Lexi said, it's really about engaging with the fans in different ways around everything that Maiden is. And obviously, personally, I had a huge amount of interest in doing this. And one of the key things for me, or one of the most exciting things, has really just been able to bring Eddies that everybody knows. But then, there are a lot of additional Eddies coming into the game based on, some of the slightly more obscure characters or whatever. But so this opportunity to bring Eddie to life in this way has really been personally very gratifying. If you're at the party tonight, there's a lot more examples of some of this key art concept that we've done. So hopefully you can make it down to the basement of the Gables and take a look at some of the other stuff that's come out. For example, here's the Clairvoyant now, as far as the game's concerned. Interestingly, we decided that not all of the characters need to be Eddie. In this case, the Clairvoyant's become female, very strong female character within the game. So this slide's about the key learning, and I want to go through it really quickly. I think the key thing is that as you look at a license, we've been so lucky in finding an organization that really wanted to meet us halfway in terms of this being a real partnership and collaboration. It's obviously not the case that you can take a license and just tack it onto an existing framework and hope for it to work. And so, hopefully this is an example of how, the IP holder and the band and the music can all work together so that we can create a really compelling, top-notch game experience. Passion projects is an interesting thing. Obviously, there are dangers around passion projects, in terms of sort of going too far with the IP or whatever. But again, I think, this has really been a great experience as the team has come together, not all of them Maiden fans. And so, from my perspective, I've sometimes had to take a little bit of a backseat to make sure that the game is a great game first and foremost. And obviously having Lexi on the Phantom side has been really great from that perspective as well.
We're gonna have to.
All right. Well, so there's lots of opportunities for integration with the tour. And lots of opportunities to take part, go and have a photo taken with Eddie, come to the party, and check out IronMaidenLegacy.com for more information. Thank you very much.